Good evening. Welcome to the November 16, 2021 meeting of the Newtown Township Trails and Greenways Committee. I'm reminding everybody that this event will be recorded. Secretary Cook, could you please read the roll?
Chairman Custer.
Here.
Co-Chairman Anthony DiVincenzo.
Here.
Aaron Cook is present. Amy Blagrup. Present. Bethany Dungisa. Here. Delia Archer. Absent. Joseph Falcon.
Present.
Terry McCarthy.
Right here.
Thank you. Also present are Township Manager Niece, Director Sharitz. And that's it. May we please have a moment of silence? Please rise and pledge allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Again, we're going to try to keep this meeting under 2 hours. We were successful last time, which is a good thing. So I'd like you to keep comments under 3 minutes. See how we do. Next item is public comment for agenda items only. Is there any public comment? Hearing none, we'll move on. Next item is the agenda. Do I hear a motion to approve the agenda as written?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Next on the agenda are the minutes of September 21. Is there any discussion on the minutes? Do I hear a motion to approve?
I move.
Second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. We're at a point in our meeting where we're at presentations. We're very fortunate to have Tim Denny here with us. He's a former director of Parks and Recs for Haverford Township, has been the gold standard in the Philadelphia area for many years on walking trails. Last month, we did hear from Rich Kerr, and he was on the volunteer side. Tonight, we're going to hear about what it's like from the township side. And I'd like to heartily welcome Tim Denny.
Thank you, John. Good evening, everyone. Nice intro, John. I understand Rich presented to you last week. Rich is a great guy. One of my mottos in life is that it's better to be lucky than smart. And Rich is one of those cases where, for what it's worth, a number of years ago, I put in our newsletter, our Have a Good Times, that anybody who would like to be on our committee to make Haverford Township more walker and biker friendly, please contact me and like have you on the committee. So I heard from Rich. He said, I saw in your Have a Good Times, which I've been putting it in there for a couple of years. And he said, I'd like to be on the committee. I said, well, congratulations. You are the committee. So that's how I got started with Rich. And he really was just a great resource. And I know he was here last month talking to you. And just for my own sake, are there any volunteers here on the trails group? Or is that what you're currently forming? Is that my understanding?
Yeah.
Well, the committee itself is really all volunteers from the community.
I see.
And so that is our
I
starting
see.
spot.
So all of you sitting up there are volunteers. Oh, okay, great. Just to have a better sense.
But
of
we're
it.
a township committee and we're looking to get volunteers
I see.
from the community to help us.
Got it.
And then I think it's going to be the intersection that we were
Sure.
looking to
Yeah.
get together.
So John had asked me if I could speak to our experience, my experience, working with volunteers and how we got our trails. And I'll be happy to share that with you, and hopefully it'll be of some benefit to you. Quick background, my story is I grew up in Haverford Township, right down the road there. My wife grew up in Haverford Township, right down the road there. We raised our 5 kids in Haverford Township, right down the road there. So I say sort of a stick in the mud, haven't made it very far in life. But I started with Haverford Township in 1980. And at that time, they had no recreation department. And I was actually hired under a CETA grant. You're all too young to know CETA, but there was a federal program in Haverford Township. We got in a grant to hire somebody for 18 months to try and straighten out the use of our ball fields. Anyway, as that process went through, when the grant ran out, fortunately for me, some township residents got up a petition asking that I be hired. So I was started as a one-man department with a budget of 0. And so the question was, and at that time, all of our park maintenance, I think similar to Newtown, was under Public Works. So we did have parks, we just didn't have any active park and rec department. And so I say all that because it was just kind of natural for me to work with volunteers, because how else was I going to do anything? So, and we did have some real success, not just in trails, but in a lot of things. And we were fortunate, we grew into a big department over the years, generated a lot of revenue, and actually were awarded the top department in the state a few years back. So we had some good success, but a lot of that was kind of starting where you guys are, and certainly working with volunteers. And one of the things that I think, in my experience, tell you a quick story. My brother, Chuck, is an orthopedic surgeon. When his son, David, was 7, he had to do a little assignment for school. What does your dad do? And David wrote, my dad plays basketball. Never mentioned the fact that he was a doctor. The reason I tell that story is when you work in recreation, for the most part, you are working in areas where people are doing the things they love to do. And so it's just a natural thing. I always saw it as my role was to tap into the energy in the community, to act as a conduit to the community, to sort of facilitate the things that are out there. How can I make that energy produce some things? And it was a lot wide range, things like, you all know, Little League, soccer, all that kind of stuff, which is all great stuff. But also we have a dog park that was started, and people say, Tim, you're nuts, but volunteers do that. People involved in bird watching, fishing, on and on and on and on, because people are doing things that they love to do. Someone once said, when we play, we are most truly ourselves. And so it's that kind of thing where you're just trying to tap into what you already love to do and what you want to do. How do I make it easier from my position in the township to let you do the things that are good for the township and make us a better township? So that was really my approach from the beginning, somewhat out of necessity, but also because I really believed it was the way to go. I think some of the things that I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir somewhat, but when I was first trying to get trails going in Haverford Township, it wasn't quite as popular as it is now. That was 15, 20 years ago. But it struck me if you've ever heard of Hackford Reserve, it used to be the former Haverford State Hospital property. And that was my project and it was a long journey. But it turned into something pretty special. And again, what I was able to do, I think, was to convince the people of the township that what you want and what you want and what you want and what you want and what you want line up against those who didn't see it that way, perhaps. But this just was published, and this is Atherton. And Atherton is the name of the community of condominiums that are up there. And part of the deal, real quickly, was we bought the land from the state for X amount, $3.5 million. We were allowed to sell off some under some different guidelines, and then we used that money to develop some of the facilities that we had. And in the end, it was great. But what I got a call about 6 months ago saying, could they interview me for this? So this is Atherton, which is believe me, I'll never be living in Atherton. So it's a pretty upscale. But one of the things they want to do is talk about how they are right beside this open space with all these trails. And so, again, that wasn't as accepted 20 years ago as it is now. So people understand that's what people want. Trails are good for the economy. They're certainly going to help your housing, good for the environment. They're just plain good, you know. And the question is, how do you make them happen? I was involved over the years with 3 basic kind of trails that I'll put out there. One was Darby Creek Trail, which runs right along Darby Creek, if you're familiar with Haverford Township, right along our western border. And another one was up at the reserve, where we have about 5 miles of trails through the open space. And then the other one was the old railroad line, the Pennsylvania Railroad line, and, which Rich was a huge help in all these things. But that was through very much a neighborhood, you know. So three different types of trails. And the experiences that I had with those. But in my experience, like I said, Rich was one of the first people, but we had done some other things. Actually, one of the things that we did, I'm also a big believer in this kind of thing, but so approximately when we first officially bought the land up at Haverford State Hospital, we made the deal. One of the first things we did was we had a Veterans Day run. And everything, there was still 23 hospital buildings there. It was nothing, but we wanted people to see what we saw, like what we can do here, we believe. So we had this run, Veterans Day, and on the back, we had what we thought would be the possibility of trails as time went on. So that was a big part of our steps. And I think one of the things that, in my view, of where the volunteers come in a lot of different ways. Often I'm asked to speak to volunteers, and what I recommend to them is find somebody like me on the inside. I don't mean that I'm so wonderful, but somebody who's on the township side of things, because they can really help you. Because as you all know, if you're with the township, Steve and Nick and everybody, Public Works, you got a lot of different priorities, a lot of people competing, do this, right? And one of the things that I think that volunteers can do, in addition to the work, just the flat out work, is they can be your spokespeople. You know, they can go to your commissioners, they can go to your neighbors, they can go to your township manager, they can go and really make things happen in a different way. I would often use different people. I would think, she's the best person to go to speak tonight. He's the best person to go to speak to this group. And that's one of the things that I've always used volunteers in that way. Another thing, again, somebody like Rich was terrific. He had me over his house one night. He wanted me to look at, I'd asked him to come up. He was a transportation engineer, and he retired. And I asked him, could you come up with a way to look at Haverford Township, which is very congested, very hilly, a lot of busy roads, and how we make it more bike friendly. And what a mistake. I sat at his house for 6 hours looking at this presentation where he detailed every road in the township. But sometimes they can bring in expertise. You know, you have volunteers that can bring in expertise. And again, as a township person, again, I'm pointing to you guys because you know you've got competing interests. So if you have somebody like a Rich who can really help you, I think it's great. The only thing they can do is represent you at meetings, you know, maybe for the county. County's having some meeting, can somebody from Newtown come? So I was a big believer in trying to utilize almost any volunteer that came along in any way. My whole thing was meet them wherever they are, you know, whatever they're willing to give to you. Obviously, some of the things that you're probably already aware of, you know, once you get the word out that you're looking for volunteers, in addition to the individuals like the Riches of the world, you know, worked a lot with school groups, scout groups, the Rotary, churches, groups that need service for Martin Luther King Day, even the, you know, the convicts, you know, people, the county, whoever is willing to work for you. And one of the things that I learned over the years, and again, I may be speaking to the choir here, but often these groups are looking for projects, and trails are a terrific project because you can, you know, there's always something you can do and you can make it kind of simple. And then if you have somebody like your public works department come in and say, look, you know, we'll drop off the things on Friday, you know, the dirt or whatever that you need. And then the volunteers come in and work on, or even during the day. And that sort of starts feeding itself for every year for their annual day of service, they're coming to you. So we have a lot of church groups and school groups that we worked with over the years, and you are meeting their needs. And scouts, my oldest son is an Eagle Scout. And one of the very first things we did up there was go in and start blazing the trails of what used to be. And scouts love that kind of stuff. And we've had, gosh, I can't tell you how many Eagle Scout projects we've had on our trails where, you know, we need a little walking bridge to get over this little babbling brook. Or we needed, you know, they'll put up signage to build bird houses, just great stuff. And the more that they know you're out there looking for people, then you feel a need for them. You know, my son, his project was cleaning up this whole creek bed of thousands of beer cans, you know, where it had been a drinking spot for forever. And so they can do some great stuff for you. And in my end of things, again, you've got Steve sitting here, and I forget, do we have an elected official? Do we have commissioners here tonight?
Not tonight.
No. But from my end, especially 15, 20 years ago, it was trying to convince my own team that this is a priority. And one of the best ways you can do that is by saying, look at all these volunteers that came out to do this. And you bring them to your commissioners meeting and you recognize them, you take the picture, and you have the commissioner come out and meet with them and see the work they're doing. And it just kind of keeps building on itself. You know, the other thing township can do is, in my capacity, I wear a number of hats, but I'm a Darby Creek Valley Association. I'm on the board there. And they were a huge partner for us. We got a gigantic grant from the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation to do an environmental study of the 120 acres of open space and how we're going to stewardship plan. But we had to put that through Darby Creek Valley Association too, because there's a federal grant with some of the guidelines. And then the flip side of that is Darby Creek Valley Association has their annual conference each year at our environmental center now that we were able to build, you know. So it really is, you know, it's mutually beneficial. If any of you, John, I don't know if you've been to our trail summit that we've had over the years. Again, we host that. And now people from all these different communities are coming in to learn from each other at this trail summit. So that's what we can do as the township side of things. And again, it's sort of as a mutually beneficial thing that I thought was not only the right way to go, but a very efficient, productive way to go. And if you get the word out, you know, that your township, and again, I commend you for being here. You know, that's a great start. Because if the township people on the inside are open to working with volunteers, man, it really makes the efficiency of it go way up. It's just a great thing. So with that, I'll tell you another little story. This is our Have Good Times from years ago. And one of the things, my township manager, he wasn't sold on trails. You know, he wasn't sold on the whole concept of trails. Just wasn't part of his background. And so one of the things I was trying to do is we put on the front of our Have a Good Times. And what I was trying to show here, this is a few years back, was that trails were for everybody. And it says on here, trails connect us to nature and to each other. They also help reduce traffic, promote healthy living, increase property values. But what I have on the cover here to show that they appeal to everybody is, that's my 94-year-old mother who has since passed away. It's my son pushing her. My son, Johnny, who's got Down syndrome. He's over on the side there playing a ukulele. But more significant, that's our township manager back there. And I knew he'd like to jog. I knew he'd like to run. I said, Larry, why don't you come down? We'll do this photo, you know? And he knew I was bringing him in. By that time, I was assistant township manager because that was my project. But, and then we tried, you know, other people, and we tried to show a range of people. The trails are for everyone. And after that, Larry was on board. You know, he was on board. Again, you guys are already starting there, which is terrific, you know, because it really can make a difference. You know, it's, I was real big into recognizing volunteers, bring them in and stuff, big into these kind of things, you know, like the shirt that you saw. This is, we have a Sunset Trail running series that, you know, during the Wednesdays in the summer, we have a 5K, sort of an easy 5K on our trails. But the whole idea, I'm a big believer in making the journey fun. You know, while you're trying to build these trails, while you're trying to get these things accomplished, get people involved and make the journey part of what you're doing. You know, it's not just getting there, but it's right where we are here today. It's fun, and tomorrow is fun. Make the journey fun, even if it gets frustrating at times. I'll give you some of my lessons learned. As Rich, I think, told you, because you sent me his presentation, I'm a big believer in do what you can, when you can, where you can. What you can, when, and I got that from, I went up to this Eastern PA Greenway Trails Conference for a number of years. They had up in the Lehigh Valley area. I don't know if any of you have been up to the Lehigh Valley area, but 20 years ago, and maybe a little bit more, I go up there and they were talking about trying to use the old railroads and the old canals to create trails. And it seemed like pie in the sky, pipe dream, not going to happen. Because they had things like giant rivers and canyons in the way and mountains in the way. But I'll tell you, over the years, here's what happens. And I definitely tried to apply this in Haverford Township. Build what you can, where you can, when you can. And maybe it's a simple project. And people come out and say, this is pretty cool. Then when you get to that stumbling block that's going to cost $3 million to get from here to that wall, then they're more receptive to it because they've always thought, boy, wouldn't it be cool if we could get from here to there? But do what you can on the easy part. And again, I know you're already doing it because I saw you have you're looking at the rail line. You know, we up at the reserve, I tried to follow the old sewer lines, tried to follow the old water lines, tried to follow the old electric lines. Anywhere that somebody else had already said, well, this is basically the easiest way to go. And so they had maintained it, even though it had closed down, you know, in 1998. So find the easiest way to go if that's possible, and do what you can, where you can, when you can. And then you start getting that momentum, and then you start getting the money. I was just meeting with, as John said, I've been retired now for 2 years, but I do go in and meet with them because they ask me to come in. And another thing that I preach is money follows money. Money follows money. Once you get that first grant, then your chances of getting the second grant and the third grant, and the money is just pouring in Haverford Township right now. I said, I feel like one of those families that came over, you know, on the boat or something, and we were poor, and now the next generation is rich, you know, wow. But and it's because they see these lending groups, these granting groups, they see you've got a grant. Somebody else must have thought you were worthwhile. Money follows money, and your volunteers can be a big part of that. You know, as I said, promote, share your vision, promote. Any chance you can. Make your community feel good about what's happening in your community. Promote. I think you probably are already aware of this because of the grants you got, but this is just to give you a sense of. I recognized sort of early on that Haverford Township was a crossroads for a lot of things. Both rail lines, old rail lines, as well as Darby Creek. So this is Darby Creek here. Here's Hackford Township. And here's, up here on the top is Hackford Reserve. Was the hospital. This is Marple over here. But you see these yellow lines. This is from a feasibility study we did with Darby Creek Trail. And it has not happened yet. But now we're trying to connect to Marple. Whole idea. So anytime that you are able to show funding groups like DVRPC, which probably, again, Rich probably said all this last week or last month, I mean, but then that's a huge help too, because again, it meets their needs. And whether it happens in our lifetime or not, you can still get it in your community. So we've gotten some pretty significant money from DVRPC to do the Pennsy Trail, which is the old railroad, Darby Creek Trail, which goes on Darby Creek, follows the sewer line. And we just got 2 years ago, a big grant to go across Manoa Road to build a bridge. And if you had asked me 10 years ago, would our township commissioners or anybody else ever even consider that? I said, I don't think so. But it built momentum. So now we have the money to do it, and we have the political will where people are thinking, this is a great idea. Why stop the trail here? Why not go across Manoa Road where it used to be a railroad bridge? Why not go across? That'll get you down to Westchester Pike. So it really, success builds its own success. You just keep going, you keep going. Again, I think if you have an opportunity, it's volunteers to get on a committee, Delaware County Open Space Committee, they're looking for people. Anytime that you're doing that, you are filling their needs and they will reciprocate. Get to know your people from Darby Department of Conservation and Natural Resources. Get to know your person who's the rep in this area. If they ever need people, ask one of your volunteers. It'll come back. Believe me, it'll come back. It really pays off. Other things volunteers can do for you is certainly they can sometimes meet with people that you think, well, I don't know if it's a good idea to send out Steve. Let's send out John, or let's send out me. But maybe have them go talk to that neighbor. A story we're trying to, again, if any of you are familiar with Westchester Pike down here where we are, the old LA Fitness, now they're building a new building. And anyway, we had to meet with the guy who managed all that property. And we were trying to get them to say, can we have like the back 10 feet of your property? Because that'll allow us to continue this trail. And before DVRPC is going to release this money, we have to get the okay on this. And initially, he was just doing his job, protect, he works for the owners. He's protecting the parking lot and the whole shopping area. Wasn't that interested. Something about told me that he was Irish. And so I've never been to Ireland. Oh, yes, he had. Well, my family and I, we had just taken a trip to Ireland. One thing led to another. He named this famous whiskey, which I didn't know much about. But the engineer said to me later, Tim, I'm so glad you were at that meeting because we were getting nowhere. And sometimes you know these people, like you can talk to them in a different way and you get things done. So it's another great way, in my opinion, to use volunteers. I think there's just the other thing that I would say for my advice anyway is don't get bogged down. Sometimes you just get stuck on something and think, where do we go from here? And sometimes it's you stick with it, but you don't let it stop you. Move over to something where you can have get some momentum going again, get some energy going again, get the community involved again, because it happens. It happens in these kind of projects. You know, you just got to stick with it, stick with it. Again, Haverford State Hospital closed in '98. It took us 5 years before we worked out a deal with the state to purchase land. Took another 4 years before we were able to work out an agreement with the developer, and then another 5, 6, 7 years to develop all these things. So sometimes it's easy to get bogged down. You just kind of stick with it, stick with it, stick with it. But look for other things to keep the energy alive. That's what you want to do. You know, just keep the energy alive, whether it's a maintenance day, whether it's an event, whether it's the naming of something. I don't think you have a Parks and Recreation department here, right? So who handles like that? Is that a park board that you have, or?
We have a park board, and we have a joint commission between Marple and Newtown for
Oh,
recreation.
okay. Oh, okay. Well, good. Is that Rich? Is Rich still in that?
Yeah.
Rich is a good guy. And I would just finish with this maybe. A couple things. A few years ago, a guy who was president of our civic council, volunteer organization, he came up to me, he said, Tim, it was very nice of him to say, it was flattering, but he said, you've made us believe we could do things in this township. He said, you know, 30 years ago, it just felt like nothing happens in Haverford Township. You made us believe that we can. And I said to him, I said, well, that's nice, Chris, that's very nice. I said, but, you know, it took the volunteers. It took the volunteers. It took people coming to me with ideas and being willing to work with me. And building that partnership and that trust. Way back in my early days, like I said, I was a CETA employee, could not have gotten lower on the totem pole than I was. You know, I ended up assistant township manager with this project, and it was great. And I had a great run, and I feel very fortunate. But there used to be this old guy came in to see me all the time. Bill Mealy was his name. And each time he came in the office, in my early days, I would cringe. I'm sure you guys have those people too. You go, here comes Bill. And Bill always wanted me to do something with this trail, but there was no trail. But he had an idea of this trail that could be. And I used to cringe when he came in because I can't do anything for you. I have no juice in the township, you know. But over time, I remember I went to his funeral. There was only like 4 people at his funeral. And over time, I really came to admire the Bill Mealys of the world, because they truly are the ones who get things done. They stick with it, they stick with it, they stick with it, they stick with it, you know. And finish with this quick story. He'd asked me to go on this walk. It was February, and he was going to lead a walk. And I thought, snow, and he's going to show me where he thinks this trail could go along Darby Creek. You know, it wasn't like there was a trail where he thinks it could. Well, he had his group with him. We weren't walking 5 minutes, and this woman fell and broke her wrist. And she was an older woman. I had to carry her out to the road and get an ambulance. I thought, Bill, you're nuts. But in the end, you know, I hope Bill is somewhere where he sees that we've got this great paved trail now that is tremendously popular, and especially during COVID. The trails were hugely popular all during COVID. So I applaud you for trying. I encourage you to hang in there and just know that it's people just like you who I worked with, and we were able to accomplish a lot. Good luck. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tim, I have a question.
Sure.
I think one of the things that has amazed me is looking at Haverford, how much responsibility you were able to delegate to some of these private groups.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you could sort of give us a rundown how that happened and how it's got to have to be a little bit concerned when you initially did it.
Yeah, I
But
think,
then it
John,
got easier over time.
the only thing I can say is I think a lot of it had to do with how I started. And a lot of it had to do with the fact that I live in the township. And a lot of it, I wanted to have the township a better township. You know, And I knew I didn't have the resources, but how to tap into this energy. And I don't know if I should say this in front of your township manager, but I'm a big believer in it's easier to ask forgiveness and permission. So that was my approach a lot, like if you're willing to do it, I'll do whatever I can to try and help you do it. And you're right, I did give, it's probably me. I did give them a lot of responsibility. And I thought I'm just gonna let it keep going and, get as much done as we can. And I tried not to, how do I say it? I think there's a lot of reasons that you can't do something. People always come up with reasons why you cannot do something. But as I would say to my staff and I say to my kids, there's only one reason that things get done, and that's because somebody does it. And so I really tried to take that approach working with volunteer groups. You're right, I would hand off a lot of authority, or a lot of decision-making, because I thought until I have reason to believe otherwise, I'm going to do this. And luckily, it worked out. I mean, sometimes you got to rein them in a little bit. And I do think with volunteers, somebody told me this once, and it was great advice. With volunteers, try and tell them, this is where we're trying to get. You let them know what you're trying to accomplish, because you don't want them trying to accomplish something that wasn't what you were, you don't want to be working on things that are not going to get you where you want to get. So I do think with volunteers, you give them general direction. Here's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get to here. So that, because if you don't do that, I think sometimes it can ruffle some feathers and cause some bad feeling where they have their own ideas. So I do think you try and set the parameters, try and set the direction. But if they have a way of getting there, let's see how it goes, let's see if we can get there. So that was my approach. Yeah.
Great. Any questions from the public?
Well, again, good luck to all of
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I've always had a lot of admiration for Tim and Rich and Peter Pugliese for what they've accomplished. I know when Haverford was kind of nothing at all, and then all of a sudden it appeared on the map. And they have a trail summit and a whole bunch of other things. So I think this was informative for me. I hope it was for you.
And they have beautiful trails and beautiful facilities, so it's a
They
great
do.
example.
They do. Okay, we're moving on to new business. First, discuss and consider approving membership for the subcommittees. Now, if we could have that subcommittee sheet and maybe to the next pages, which show the volunteers that are in there. We've got our 5-person group down to 4 so they can hold public meetings. And this was based on a document that I'd sent around as to what your skills and preferences were. So I think we've got a good group. A concern I have, and Denise, maybe you could provide some light. I have a little bit of concern with a 4-person committee.
Yeah. Yeah, the challenge if you have a 4-person committee, we would need anytime they met. Well, no, you're 9, so you're okay. But if
I think we're 8 now, right? I mean, technically, it doesn't
you're a
matter.
9-person committee, you may not have everybody here, but you're a 9-person committee. And so in that, I would always just be careful because, it would mean, John, if you wanted to attend, you might not be able to attend.
Or somebody from another committee would like to
Yeah.
attend, which creates the problem. I am thinking of maybe sending out a memo asking people to rank where they are by committee and the most important to them to the least. and maybe then come back at the next meeting, suggest some changes. And we have some committees with only 2 people, and we're going to be forming more. So keep that in mind. We'll try to, as a goal, get down to 3, but I don't want to stifle people at this time. I want them to get out and get moving. So do I hear a motion to approve the memberships on the committee shown
Can
on
we
the
just,
chart?
can I just review really quickly?
Sure.
We did the roll of 8 and Delia is the 8th and she's absent. Who is the 9th member?
We had a ninth.
We did.
Yeah,
Somebody actually resigned.
I
Wasn't it-
understand, but you're a 9-person committee, so your quorum is, when you still have to have 5 as a
Yeah,
quorum.
yeah, we still have that
I
five.
just wanted to see who is the 9th person. I only have 8.
trying to remember.
Well,
I
you're,
have
I
Delia
believe,
Archer, who's absent, and then the 7 of us that are here tonight,
and
Amy, Aaron.
Sharon
Sharon
Trio
Trio.
would be
Yeah.
the
She's the
9th.
9th. Okay,
Okay, so that's, you're not, you were appointed as a 9-person committee.
okay.
So in order for you to do business, 5 of you have to be here. So for a majority. And so anytime there are 5 of you together, you kind of fall under that Sunshine Act rule. And we need to make sure that we have you protected if you end up are going to do that. I need to make sure I advertise meetings and things like that. That's the reason why on the subcommittees, John and I had talked that we would like to make sure that that never happens so that you can meet and kind of do your thing and then bring it back here to the group and do that. And so that's the big key.
While we're on the subject of that law, you had mentioned that it was okay for more than 4 people in this group to go on the walking.
Yeah.
Where is the line there?
So it's really when you are discussing business, okay, that's when you have to be very careful. And I use that, I'm putting that in kind of in quotes. You know, if you guys happen to all be together on the trail walk, like we were, for those who attended on Saturday, and you just happened to say, oh, we probably ought to look at something here. You know, we ought to consider doing this. And it comes back to the meeting and happens, that's not an issue. But if you were to make a decision while you were out there and say, we decided while on the trail walk to do X, that becomes a problem because it has to then be when you guys deliberate and or make a decision, that's when you need to have it as an advertised meeting for the public to be able to come in and weigh in on what you're going to be recommending to the board, what you're suggesting that you want to do.
So if we're going on a trail walk, you would advise us to split up a little bit.
No,
so we're not together.
Now what I'm saying is,
No.
I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is, first of all, when you do a trail walk, I hope that you all can go because we had a great time for those who were there on Saturday. It was a good experience. I thought, you know, it was just a really good outing for the community. I think you mentioned, John, that you thought there was about 30 people there, and I think that's probably pretty close to what was there. And that's all good. And you guys can go do that. But it wouldn't be a place where you would be making a decision as a group.
Okay.
You know, but like I said, but if you're all standing there and for example, you're walking down the trail and you say, we really ought to ask the Public Works Department to address this spot of this trail because it's got damage. Or we need to add to our next agenda that we want to talk about this. That's not the problem. It's if you go through and then start making a decision about the trail that, oh, we're gonna just widen it 2 feet, let's say, and you make that decision and then you never take it in a public setting like this, that's the problem, if that makes sense.
But it's a little hard for people to hear what you're saying. If there's a group of 5 committee people standing around and talking, should we be concerned about the appearance or not?
Like I said, as long as there's nothing that happens in that becomes an action item for you,
Got it.
or that you spend a lot of time deliberating, trying to convince one another one way or the other, I think you're fine. Just to bring a topic up and say it's something we ought to discuss later, and you add it to the next agenda, that's great.
So
So
that's one of the huge benefits of having those events is it's going to inspire us.
it absolutely is
I
going to
mean,
inspire, and it's,
Things pop in your head when you're walking along those trails and, hey, yeah, this would be great. We should. So that's part of the huge benefit of us being there, not just
Yeah.
only the public outreach. All of it.
So fueling potential agenda items is fine, making decisions regarding.
and we're having a
yeah,
lot of
that's very-
deliberation
yeah,
about
that's very
something.
easy, yeah.
That's where you kind of start to cross the line.
That seems very clear.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, the law defines it as any prearranged gathering of an agency which is attended or participated in by a quorum, which is 5 for us, of the members of an agency held for the purpose of deliberating agency business and taking official action. So it goes into what you're saying, and they have, line item listed 4 categories for considered official action.
Yeah,
I mean, it's very specific.
it is very specific.
But it would be very, very specific if we were to get together as part of a budgeting meeting and there's 5 people there and it's not open, notorious, and public,
Yeah,
then that would qualify as a violation of the Sunshine Act.
correct.
Yeah, the confusion originally came is that a few people reached out. I know I did. A few other people was just because it was a township event.
Yes.
And we would be talking about the trails and committees, but then Leonard cleared that up. I know he spoke to you and
Yeah.
it was good. The clarification is helpful because
Let me-
most of
let
us
me just-
here, with the exception of John, I think, have not served in any public sector of any kind. So-
Let me just give you another example, but I'm going to take it out of you for a minute. We had an event, we had to gather in the circle, to gather at sundown event that they did. And I believe there was at least 3 board members at that event, if I recall. And so you could say that there was a quorum of the board there, but there was no deliberation that was done. There was, but it would have been wrong for our board members not to be there supporting an activity of the community. So if it's an activity of this group, it's really okay for you all to be there. I would encourage you all to be there because you should be talking up what we're trying to accomplish. And by the way, I think you guys did an awesome job with that on Saturday. And so it's really good. And I want you to feel really comfortable going out and doing those things and everybody showing up. It's when you do business, that's when it becomes an issue.
Thank you. That was very clarifying. Any other discussion on the subcommittee membership?
Yes, so I want to bring up, so I'm looking at my screen because I could barely read that from over there, but what you're proposing is that we at least agree right now on the different subcommittees and subtasks that we have proposed, but saying that the individual membership, because of that issue that we just discussed, especially in this trail signage and access one, which is the one that has the one right there on the short term that has 4 people, and then the next one, public outreach, we have 4 people across all of them. So essentially, we got to go back and revisit that at the next meeting. But basically, this time, we're just agreeing upon these kind of subcommittees and tasks.
We will,
Right.
we're agreeing on the people, subject to modification going forward.
That's what I mean. Subject, I mean, we'd have to modify to
Yep,
avoid that
yep.
issue. Okay.
We initially had 5 in one subcommittee. We were able to work that down to 4.
I think we need to get to
That's the max.
3
Mhm.
in every, right? That's
Yeah.
the goal. Okay.
But I
You
went,
can be 4 as long as nobody else ever comes.
Exactly.
Well-
But John wants to be able to come to different subcommittee meetings, and
Correct.
that's the reason why you would need to get down to 3.
Yeah. That's what we, wondered about and made sure that.
So I would argue if John makes up the 4th on a particular line, you're probably okay keeping it at 4.
Mhm.
But if John's wanting to be able to come to different committees, or maybe even Anthony is, I think you're the vice chair, if I
Yep.
recall, then that may be another situation where if you two are kind of trading off on that, you just want to make sure you're not putting yourself over.
Like it works.
Can I suggest that The two subcommittees that I'm on under public outreach are Facebook and other media and publicity announcements. If you want to attend any of those subcommittee meetings that I can step out,
Recuse, yeah, that's what I was wondering, whether if John has a particular purpose, can one recuse?
I
them
would
and
just
not
step
attend?
out if he wants to
Yeah,
come.
you just want to be careful in the process that, I always say, you're best if there's not an appearance that there's something. And so I always use the guideline of, guardrails are there for a purpose, and the guardrails are not there necessarily to really keep you from going over. They're to remind you to stay away from them, right? Because they will keep you from going over, hopefully. But the best way to have a guardrail be functioning is to stay away from it. So, my point would be, for where you can. And the other thing that I would say is because you have so many committees, you might be wearing yourselves out. And,
Yeah.
so you might be better off trying to have, a little bit smaller groups to make that work. It's up to you though.
One of the things is we want the subcommittees to be able to have the ability to stay in the communication loop. So if you're in one particular one, there's going to be an email chain between the three of people in that group that John or myself or somebody can bump in on, or if you want to cross-pollinate with another subcommittee, some representative from that can be in there, but we don't want you to recuse yourself because then all of a sudden you're out of the loop
Yeah.
on something that could have been critical, which you may have had a vital role or may in the future. So that I don't think, in my personal opinion.
I
don't
was
think
just
it's
thinking more along the lines of if he wanted to periodically come in for like a review or an update,
Yeah.
it wouldn't be necessarily something that I would need to be, I'd sort of be doing a lot of the legwork with the subcommittee and he can pop in. I'm a process person, so I was hoping we could put a process in place for this, but it sounds like we can't, and we'll just play it by ear.
Yeah, I think everybody in the subcommittee is going to be important. You
Okay.
never know where the ideas are going to come.
So the other thing I have to bring up though is Sharon Trio, the 9th member of this committee, is not on any of these.
Yep.
Okay, and isn't going to be on any subcommittees?
No, she's not on committee anymore.
So she's not in the committee.
Oh, so that's somebody that they
We're
were
gonna be, the
Okay.
board will be appointing somebody else to take her spot.
Got it. Okay,
And so you will be back up to 9.
okay,
They just haven't done that yet.
okay.
And they may be waiting. So January is a time in which the board appoints and replaces members typically.
Okay,
And that's on January the 1st, to January 3rd is when the board does reorganization and they go through and then they're off. And, so that's a real typical time. And we're right now bringing a list together, people that are interested. So it may very well be that's when they go ahead and do that.
okay.
I have a couple other process questions there and following up on yours. So, at the point, since John, of course, is the chair, but he's not, this is a committee, so votes are, decided by everyone. At what point should each of the committees plan, if they've discussed and they have questions, et cetera, I would think we would want to hear back from the committees, like where they might want input from the group as a whole. Yes, the chair, but other people too. So what sort of processes have people used before with some of these smaller?
Well, I will say this is probably, of all of our committees, this is the first one that I've seen with this many subcommittees.
Mhm.
Okay, so this is kind
It's
of a new process for me
Right.
as well, trying to figure out that balance.
Four subcommittees?
No, but
Well, I'm
there's,
looking at,
So,
No, you're
so
looking-
there's a confusion in this. So the subcommittees, there's only 4. All of these are individual tasks that would just fall under that
no,
organizational
Anthony, I
chart.
think you're mistaken actually,
Yeah,
because different people
I
are
think
on
those
different
are
of the
subcommittees.
subgroups, right?
I would make a motion tonight because we don't have the rosters for each subcommittee.
Yeah.
As of right now, I'd make a motion to approve the subcommittees as titled. So for instance, short-term project committee, long-term project committee, public outreach committee, and finance committee. And then
Yes.
once it's determined specifically 3 by 3 as individuals for topics of each subcommittee, we can approve that at a later time.
I agree
The,
with that, but I also think we're gonna have another person we also have to put in, so we can't we
Right.
can't assign people right now, really, anyway. Because we've got 4 in 2 of them and 3 in the rest of them. We can't add this additional person to any of the committees because they're too big. So I agree with the first level, making a motion tonight to approve the committee org chart for those 4 subcommittees, but getting down to the second level, I think is going to have to be addressed.
I think I,
Okay. At a previous meeting, we did approve the subcommittees.
I thought you had done that.
Okay, so that's already been done.
So we were hoping tonight to approve the individuals so they can get started.
Okay.
The stuff underneath, I would almost call like, they're just project groups, that's all.
Yeah.
They're individual project groups that are underneath of these, that fall under an organizational structure, that's all.
Yeah, but there, if you added all of those up under, say, the Public Outreach Committee, there'd be a lot more than,
that's what I'm saying, same thing, finance committee, if you just count the names in each of the trees, there's at least 5 people there.
Yeah.
So right now, these are sort of, I think these were placed as if each of these others were distinct sort of groups. And I guess my process question then was, would it be beneficial for this committee to have sort of a meta calendar? In other words, where we look at the year and say, well, when is the so-and-so committee, think they're going to meet? Because all of us are really busy, and I can see if we just start ad hoc schedules and you're in 10 different places, we're going to have not 3 people, but 2 people or 1 people.
Well, I think it'd be just as easy to, so for instance, it's approved finance committee under budgeting, okay? Topic of the budgeting. If we have 3, preferably 3, possibly 4, the idea there from a process perspective is whoever's in charge, will take one person's in charge saying, hey, person A, B, C, and D, we're going to have a scheduled meeting for November 18th.
Yeah.
Who can make it? And identify ahead of time, okay, 3 people say they're going to go, then it's not an issue. We don't violate
I
something.
agree.
That's true.
I think we should do it that way, where the subcommittees, you can have 4, but 3 have to be able to attend to conduct business. And then whatever is discussed and agreed upon in that subcommittee then can be brought to as an agenda item to the larger committee the next month.
Yeah, going back to your earlier question, I was going to say, anytime a subcommittee is ready to take an action or recommend an action, it would need to come back to this
Right.
whole committee
Absolutely.
for a decision before it went any further.
Right. And that's what I wanted to clarify. And I'm also just, mindful that when it's 2, it's just 2 people talking. It's not a committee of 2, although I know that townships have done really well with committees of 1. In other words, just these single-handed folks that push through any one agenda. That's different, I think, than this group here. So if it's just 2 talking, is that the best, conversation? Are we better informed with 3 people, whatever we can, knowing that sometimes it's going to be 2, but.
So let me see if I'm correct here. Your idea, Joe, would be to have a certain number of people in, say, the finance committee.
Right.
And you would have a group under here that would be kind of at large, or you can pick and choose from anybody.
I think they could still be assigned as they are. I just think the process would control the issue with respect to the Sunshine Act. So for instance, if you want to attend and one individual is not able to make it, that'd be a great opportunity for you to kind of step in.
So it might be a Zoom, it might be a conference call, it might be an in-person meeting, but does it make sense to assign a captain for each of the subcommittees? And then that person organizes when that subcommittee's meeting and gets 3 people together.
I just think it's a matter of someone just taking responsibility to do it.
Yeah, and presumably the people that have already said that they want to be involved in certain tasks are on one of those. It's not like, again, there's 9 of us, only 3.
Yeah, just, and the org chart would stay as it's written. That they're in that, let's take Facebook and other media in the public outreach committee, there can be 4 people, but when you get together and decide when the subcommittee meets, you have 3 people.
Good point. What about email chains?
Email chains, again, you need to be limited
Right.
to just the number. It's the minute that you go above 5, the minute you get to 5, Above 4 is the problem.
And that's why anybody working in any of these subtasks, it has to be a maximum of 3. Otherwise, you can't reply all to them and include John, reply all to them and include somebody from another one. Maybe it's Beth or another. You need to be able to have the whole members of your group and then an additional person at least one.
So
Well, why don't we
wanna
just make
limit
all
to
these 3 then?
3.
Now,
So John's idea, again, of going back to the drawing board and sort of prioritizing what you want to work on,
Okay.
I think will help so that we can get to 3.
okay,
Especially now that everybody sees it. Everybody has this document where everybody can go through and say, you know what? I'm in 5 categories. I would rather focus on these 2. So you can take me off of this one or that one. Be very helpful.
so we're gonna go through the org chart and prioritize ourselves.
Homework for,
Yeah, it's probably
do it.
best done, outside the meeting, just because that could.
Yeah, that'll take
the-
forever,
The
obviously.
card deck shuffling would take a little while, and we would not meet our 2-hour.
Right. Go through the org chart and prioritize ourselves for each subcommittee.
Mhm.
It
Yes.
just
Yeah.
adds another layer that
Yep.
makes it start looking like so much.
Oh, I know.
Yeah,
I think that's a good idea.
all right.
And it's the same
Combine.
people on both.
I was gonna say, so if we combine Facebook and publicity.
Social media.
Would that also
Yeah,
be
I
the
see
photos,
these two.
videos,
So
and
it's-
PowerPoint? Is that all?
PowerPoints.
Yeah, presentations.
So
that's where you would be
Aaron-
crossing potentially with the other department or the other 3 people is, hey, for this event announcement, we need some photographs. Beth's ahead of that one or something. You're ahead of the other. Okay, great. Can you
That's
bring it?
important.
That's the idea we're trying to get.
Mhm.
Okay, so that, the combined for those 2 would be Aaron, Beth, Delia, Anthony, Terry. And then we just need to get those 5 down to 3.
So
Six.
we have a box for short-term project committee. Would that be one person in charge, or would that be a separate group over top of the subcommittees below?
If you don't mind, I'm going to make a recommendation. And I thought this is where you were headed, and it seems like you're maybe not. I would say take your 4 areas, short-term projects, your finance, your long-term projects, and I forget, and then the public outreach.
Yeah.
And I would have 3 people on each of
Yes.
those,
Yeah.
understanding that they have tasks and all the,
Right.
they're maybe looking at all of those areas.
Mhm.
And from time to time, a member from another area may be a good add to come in and help with something. But I think that it seems to me like and I'm just trying to help you kind of get to simplify this.
Yeah.
I think what you're trying to do sounds okay, but I think you're making it more complicated
I
than it
agree.
needs to be. I think if you just focus on those 4 and have people working on those 4,
3 people each in the 4 areas, and then we can assign whatever tasks beneath we want.
and if you need help from somebody else, then you get them to come in and maybe do something for you, but not work on the committee itself. And then you're fine. Or that's when you can add the 4th person for a specific purpose.
Yeah.
And be able to do that, knowing that they have skills in that area. That would be my recommendation, because I think to try to do what you're trying to do, it will get too confusing.
I agree.
And I think that you're going to find that you've created this web that
Yeah.
you spend more time trying to figure out how not
And
to
scheduling.
get
Okay.
how to stay out of violating
Yeah.
Sunshine Act,
Right.
and it's
Yeah.
worth the
And
energy.
back to Amy's point, scheduling all of those subcommittees
It's
is
just-
probably gonna be not manageable.
Yeah, I can just, I really like this suggestion because it just seems like it's a little bit too much. And essentially we have different areas of potential focus over the time. And I think the skills inventory, John, that we've done, and as we get to know one another, we know, oh, Joseph's the expert in blah, 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 let me reach out to,
Okay.
we'll get to know each other's.
So each of these
specific
committees
skills.
would have 3, but if you needed a particular expertise, you could call
Mhm.
that person in.
Steve, exactly how you pointed out was how it was originally envisioned. And then
Yeah,
it's my
this
fault.
is-
I was absent for the last meeting. And I was the one that originally proposed those 4 within the executive one where we could float in to every one of them. And then I missed last meeting. So I apologize because I feel like it somehow, when I saw this, wasn't enough time to really go over it until the meeting.
And I would just
Exactly how you said it,
suggest,
exactly
I just
how
would
originally-
suggest, I noticed that you have the executive subcommittee listed here, but you are
That's
you
right.
as a group are the committee that makes the decisions.
That's right.
Yeah.
And,
I just meant that for us to be floaters.
Yeah.
Because we will need to be involved to help avoid
I
sunshine
mean,
Act
you could,
and have that all get working together.
The
That's
2 of
why.
you, I think, can do that. I did decline that
Okay.
the executive subcommittee as secretary, just because it was going to be too time intensive for
That's
me.
fine.
But do you want to take this on to rework it, or does John want to
I
do
can
that,
do that.
or I can do that so that we can talk about it before the next meeting?
Yeah, maybe the 3 of us could get together and work on it.
Okay.
Now, I think initially we were talking about the executive committee because we had all these individual subcommittees
Yeah.
just to pull things together. If we get rid of those, I think it diminishes the
Yeah.
need for an executive.
And I think from a process standpoint, when these committees of 3 get together, maybe pulling someone else in, there could be floaters from the executive committee on to these subcommittees. Once they figure out what their summary is of what they've worked on, then they submit it as an agenda item for the next meeting. And that's when the whole committee comes together and makes any kind of decision.
And I just, my background is 25 years in association management, just from a looking at the literature standpoint, executive committees are going away because what they've found, and they're just looking to do smaller boards. So rather than boards of 50, well, you have to have an executive committee because how do 50 decide? You get a smaller group like this where people don't feel marginalized, that they don't have a voice, and there's just a small group essentially directing it, because why then have these other volunteers? So I personally would favor really considering strongly avoiding the idea of an executive committee and seeing how we operate, and then if it becomes out of hand. But that's again just based on the association literature that I follow for the organizations that I've run.
I agree.
All right, so we're going back on the drawing boards for these, and maybe the 3 of us can sit and discuss that.
I have that in the minutes as an action item is for the 3 of us to
Okay.
get together.
So
Perfect.
question though, I thought that we sort of were agreeing that we're hearing consensus that we would have the 4 big boxes as shown here, short, long, public, and finance.
Yeah.
And just that everyone would sign up for, if there's, 4 things and there's, 9 of us, that a couple people are going to have to be on 2 and perhaps have that time. But I'm not sure what are we redrawing?
We're just trying to figure out
Yeah.
what to propose to the next meeting as to who is within those
Mhm.
4 separate groups now, based on the skills and
Mhm.
preferences that everybody already.
And the long-term project committee, we haven't filled up yet, but there are definitely projects that we should be planning for. So that would be a good. Okay. All right. Moving on new business, the next item is discuss and consider approving a tree planting project. Now, I had gotten an email from Sydney Mahalo of the EAC, who's also a master watersheds steward. And she was offered a huge number of trees for possible planting. So, Mr. Neese, I don't know whether other groups have weighed in on taking those trees. How should we approve?
I'm not sure I know what number of trees that is or what it is.
Okay,
Terry, do you want to comment?
Yeah, John, I was told on at the walk that is no longer in effect. That offer is done.
it's been withdrawn.
Yeah, I
Okay.
was told that moved. Cheryl Grosso.
Yeah, I think the one thing I want to make sure, if you decide you want to do a tree project, I'm assuming it's along a trail,
Yes.
because that's your focus is trails. But currently, that the tree planting would, anything you're going to do, you would have to take back to the shade tree committee to discuss and do. So I just want to make sure, as you think about where your focus lies and what you're working on, I'm not saying don't participate and don't do that if that's what you think needs to be done, but I would suggest if you're going to do that, you come up with the idea that you're going to put it along a certain trail, and then that you want to go ahead and work with the Shade Tree Commission in doing that. But it would really ultimately come under them, because the way the ordinance is written related to shade trees and related to particularly with any of our trails that are township owned and or township managed, that we own the right of way or the easement on, the way the ordinance is written related to the shade tree, it is their responsibility, the tree commission's responsibility to review and make a decision. It's one of the few committees that meets that has a very detailed responsibility.
Okay.
And they actually are listed as the owners of all the trees that are on public property. And it's their responsibility to make sure that what's planted makes sense and those kind of things. So even if you were going to do the project, you would have to propose what the project was, then you'd have to present it to the Shade Tree Commission for approval before you could even do the project.
Okay.
So
For example, when CRC came in and planted trees, that had to have been cleared by the Shade Tree Commission.
It was, and but it will even be more so because that project was actually already started before the Shade Tree Commission was put into place. We now have the Shade Tree Commission in place, and so everything will have to go through them and go through the process.
Okay. Okay.
Just a
And
time check too, it's 7:15 now. Our goal is for the meeting to be an hour and a half and then wrap up with 8 PM being the ending time. Just wanted to do a time check.
Okay.
should, can I ask one question about that before we move on? So we would propose a plan potentially. John, I don't know if you have any particular in mind of one of the existing trails we have or green spaces that are in our plan that we want to do a tree planting. We then make a proposal, we vote within this committee to bring it to the Shade Tree Council as something we want to do. To get to that point, do we need to be able to figure out, here's a location, here's how many trees? We might not know what the trees are because we might ask for help from the Shade Tree Council and whatever arborists they consult with of what would work best in this environment. But am I understanding that correctly?
that is the process.
Great, that's all I wanted to do.
When
I just
you,
wanted to
it's
clarify.
obviously, the sooner you kind of start that process with them, the smoother it sails. But also, George has, we have some trees in a nursery that we have. So it may be that you would come back and say, we know there's some trees in the nursery that need to be planted. We want to participate in that opportunity. And here's the ones that we would like to recommend based on that. The Shade Tree Commission's already given a list of trees that it recommends in certain places. And that's on our website. And so you can kind of do some of the homework ahead of time.
Yeah.
And then get ready and present to them.
Well, then can I propose that for the agenda for our next meeting, we potentially have one of the representatives from Shade Tree Council? We can do our homework in between now and then, look on the website, see what type of trees, and maybe at least by the time of our next meeting, we could come to some agreement of, based on what we're hearing from them, okay, maybe we all talk, Beth saw when she was on one of her hikes that this area maybe could use some tree cover for whatever reason. We talk about it and then we vote on whether or not that's something we at least want to go down. We pick one to start. Like Tim mentioned, he didn't use the term low hanging fruit. He said, whatever you can do. Maybe we need to start with one particular thing in this committee to start feeling better about the progress of what we're doing. So that could be something that we could set up for next.
We talked about quick wins. I mean, if we
Yeah.
want to designate that as a quick win, then,
That's-
Right.
We already have a
We need a trail.
That's where I was asking John initially. was,
Yeah,
do
I
we
would
have it?
think what goes through the Little League might be the best area, but again, I'm open to suggestions.
I mean, I was,
Seems like we're hitting the
I would
Yeah.
agree
Trying
with
to
that.
force something to happen.
Yeah, we're not focused on, it's
Looking
not
to,
our
like,
focus
Yeah.
right
We
now.
have a tree, we want to put it somewhere instead of like, oh, there's a need.
Let's plan for it.
Yeah.
I would personally agree with Beth and would like to say that if this comes up as part of like some of the short-term work that's being done and that, you know, one of the things that the subgroup identifies is that there are not enough trees, but this seems like it came up because someone made a request to us, which has then been rescinded. So rather than just immediately
Yeah.
saying, oh, let's do a tree as a quick win, I would say, I think our energies are well focused, like on this event last week and some of these others.
So why don't we put the idea of having someone from the Shade Tree Commission come in as sort of a next level step, but we'll put some, you know, ideas around trees and where we might like them on particular trails on as an action item on the short-term projects committee. Once we get the org chart all solidified, that can be, you know, one of the discussion topics we can put on the agenda of the subcommittee.
yeah, well, we want to understand, that's why with the Shade Tree Commissioners, we need to understand what's possible.
Okay.
So if they can be the ones that can tell us that. We don't know. I'm not proposing that all of a sudden next meeting, we just say, all right, let's put a tree here.
Right.
But we need to at least know what's possible, especially if they're the ones that are.
Yeah.
Like, I agree, like, I think.
It got proposed on the meeting, so that's just trying to follow up.
But I mean, it seems
Mhm.
like it would be better for us.
Yeah.
Yep.
You know, if it's the opportunity. But to kind of just be like, hey, we don't know what we want. We just want to know what you think about this. Seems kind of like a waste of
Mhm.
effort. So we have to.
Yeah, I personally would, I don't know if the motion's correct, but move to like table this item for right now. I mean, for me, the idea of having the Shade Tree Commission come in as a fact-finding presentation, that'd be fine, just like these others have been informative. But
Yeah.
I just feel that this is very early to focus on something specific of trees when we have so many other areas as outlined here that it's not our main focus. So I feel like we're being sidetracked. Yeah, that's my personal opinion.
Shade Tree Commission, are they authorized to act without authority?
Actually, it is the one of the commissions that has the fair amount of authority to act without going back to the board. Now, there are some things that I ask that they do so, just because I think it's in the best interest of the township. But they can actually make a decision about a tree without going back to the board.
Another question I have, I know the EAC has gotten involved in tree planting.
Yeah.
Is there a opportunity for us to do it as well? Should we combine with the EAC?
Here's what I would really ultimately really suggest with this is that hopefully the Shade Tree Commission will get into a spot that they're recommending and doing plantings of trees.
Okay.
And then volunteers from EAC, volunteers from this group would come and be a part of that to have it happen. That would be the real win. I think the challenge that's before us, and the problem is that there seems to be some overlap of some of these committees, and partly because people haven't really quite understood as the separation is coming along where the borders are of the area that I'm supposed to be playing in, right? You know, and so how does that work? And so my recommendation is let's let the Shade Tree Commission get up and get going and do that. And it would be a great opportunity for this group to come out and help plant trees when that time comes. But my one thought is, if you guys are working on trails and working on making sure we're preserving and increasing green space in the town, I think you're going to be really busy. And we have another group that's focusing on trees. I would
Yeah.
let them do that. That would be my
So if we're
recommendation.
working on trails and we see opportunities for trees, then we would alert the,
I would say you go back to the Shade Tree Commission, say, this is what we think should be done. We really do believe that because it's on township property,
Yep.
you should take the lead. Now, if it's on, let's just say, and I'm going to throw it out, that one of the things you're looking at, and we end up getting a trail someplace that's not on township property, then it may be a decision that we need to go back to a property owner or whoever it is. And then that may be a time which you all would make decision. This is going to be a project that we're going to do because it's along a trail and it doesn't fall under the Shade Tree Commission's responsibilities, if that makes sense. But if it's on township property, they're the ones that are really supposed to be driving that and making it happen.
okay.
Okay, let's, I think, move on.
Is everybody comfortable with that? Okay. Let's move on. The next item is discuss other committee projects. Does anybody want to report on their subcommittee?
I should mention that I met with Suzanne Wallinen because she asked to have some help with the sustainability issues, and we had a good meeting and gave her a bunch of data, and that's that.
Okay. Yeah, the official map committee did meet and we're considered a bunch of things, and we're going to be moving forward on that. Next item on the agenda is grants workshop. I just wanted to mention that I did attend the DCNR grant workshop on November 4th. It was very informative. Unfortunately, I was trying to juggle a commercial real estate settlement at the same time, so I didn't hit too much of it. I'm going back. They will be doing it again. So I would advise everybody that is interested to go onto their site and see when they're going to be doing it. I think it's going to be critical for us going forward because that's going to be the biggest source of funds. Mhm.
Me too. And the videos are all on their YouTube channel if you want to go look at them.
All right, next on the agenda, updated information on the Delaware County Open Space Grant.
Which is the same as the next business item. They're both the same.
Yeah.
So do you want to give
Yeah,
what
I
you
can,
know?
yeah, I can talk about it.
I think 8.6 and 9.1 are actually
They
the
are,
same.
I noticed that.
Yeah. So as of this point, we have not officially received paperwork from the county about the feasibility study grant. It was reported in the patch and they put it out. And my suspicion is that based on the way it was worded, they were probably kind of announcing it in each community via the patch. It was probably one article.
Okay.
And then, they plugged in Haverford, they plugged in Newtown, they plugged in, based on what information was available from Delaware County. But again, until we get the instructions
Mhm.
from Delaware County as to, these are the procedures to follow. These are what we want to see, as a result of that award. We're not really prepared to make much discussion about it or really move forward on anything.
All right.
As much as I think we would like to very much start, engaging folks and having discussions and reporting to you, things about it, because we don't have that,
Sure.
final paperwork in hand with instructions that we can bring to you and say, this is what we're going to do. This is what we've been asked. It's tough. It's a tough position because, I think everybody would like to begin the discussion.
Like looking at the message boards in China to see what's going on in the Politburo. So, okay, yeah, we would be very interested in understanding what our role would be in this, but it is premature at this time.
Yeah, and I will say this, that I think that to do this feasibility study, we're going to want to hire a consultant.
Yep.
And I really do believe that's going to be a major piece. And so we'll put an RFP together to go out and get a consultant as soon as we have a confirmation that we have this. And, my piece would be that I would think at least 3 of you would serve on the committee that would help us make the decision about who the consultant would be. And that would be, so we can kind of get to that spot and do that. It is a professional service, but we would still want to reach out and do an RFP requesting proposals for this so that we get an idea of what the different consultants would bring to the table. And so we would want to go through that process and do that. And then we would make a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors as to who that would be. And then that would kick off. Usually whoever serves on the selection committee ends up kind of serving on the committee that kind of helps go through the process. I will tell you that those that have helped in the past for a couple of the master plans that we've done, and this isn't quite a master plan, but there's going to be a lot of community involvement in this. And we want the community involved, particularly those who live along that area so that we get their input. And we understand what the concerns are and, where they see as positives and what they see as concerns. And so we can address a lot of those in the process. And that's what the whole purpose of the feasibility study is for. And then as we get that information, then it would be the report back to this group and into the board as to what would be the recommendation going forward. And so that's kind of how I think the process is going to work. And as soon as we get information, paperwork from the county and the board agrees to all the stuff that goes along with that, then we would probably in that same meeting make the recommendation to the board that we are going to do an RFP. And then at that point, we come back to this group and ask for 3 volunteers to be a part of, helping us go through that process.
Okay.
Who writes the RFP? Do we do it?
If you all want to write the RFP, the staff is more than happy to have folks help us do that. We've got some structured kind of things that we've kind of put together in the past that we would, use as a structure to do that. And we probably could knock it out pretty quickly. But if somebody wants to be a part of that, we're more than happy to involve anybody that would like to be involved.
We have some good people to do that. I know folks from the EAC helped write the RFP, so.
Yeah.
Okay. That would be good. Okay, moving to old business. Next is a report for the Public Trail Committee on our November 13th event.
Oh, hey. I appreciate your support for the videos starting off, because Beth did 3 amazing videos we recorded. Steve did the first one, which was great. Then I got one of Leonard and Kathy, Leonard Altieri, Kathy Cavalier. So just the buzz of video, I think, generated more buzz than a document that would either go around. And there were 2 events listed on Facebook. One was by Haverford Friends Trail Friends of Haverford, and us. And the combined, we got over 80 results, of people interested.
I think that was Friends of Marble Newtown Trails that did that.
Well, Doug Humes did something,
Yep.
so I'm not sure.
Mhm.
But that was pretty cool. And we got more people in attendance on a rainy day than actually signed up that they were coming. So considering, that for a rainy day, that was awesome. And Kathy Cavalier did a great job. And I have potential additional dates for December. I did circulate this to those I'm allowed to so far. But on December 4th and December 18th at 2 p.m. at the Square Tavern, there's a cup of Christmas tea and other holiday readings. I asked Kathy, would that be feasible to have us come back and eat your food and drink your beer? She thought it would be great. So if either of those dates work for the township, we could do it earlier, weather permitting. And I don't want to impose on Beth because she was amazing at the trail.
Fantastic.
Everybody did comment on how great you were. So thank you.
For that, need a lowdown on.
But we had people from Dunwoody come out. We had people in drenched clothes and they stuck with it and it was fun. And I'd like to do it monthly. I know it's cold, but these folks were asking me when's the next one that day. So I don't know if we have to vote on that.
Well, I think you should take an action as a committee that you're wanting to do another one and when you're wanting to do it. That way it's a committee sponsored and committee, driven
Okay.
event.
So we don't need formal approval, which we haven't set up for this particular meeting.
Yeah, I think that, I think it's fair to say that you could make that decision and it's typically, yes, we would want it on the agenda ahead of time. You're not necessarily spending any money, so I'm not overly concerned, in doing that. I don't want to, I would say going forward, if you're going to set dates, we should do that as an agenda item. And we'll probably go ahead and just have you amend your agenda tonight and do that. But I think it falls within the guidelines of being able to do.
Well, if we do additional ones, the reason that this was so extraordinary, I think, was also because of the tavern.
Mhm.
And I would like to offer that it helps if you have a partner organization. So if there's somebody in charge of the Drexel Lodge, for example, or other environments that we might want to walk, I don't know who they are, but I'm happy to reach out and connect with whomever you deem appropriate.
Yeah, and I'm throwing this out and you all can call me crazy, but, and it's okay. My wife does that regularly. But seriously, I might throw out, one of the thoughts that, you talked about doing potentially out to the meadow again. I might even recommend, because it is a winter, it might be winter and we might be looking at some things. Maybe we would go actually down the Goshen Trail, which is right there. And some people a fair number of people have walked that, but there may be some people that have never walked that. It might be an opportunity to really talk about some of the needs that are along the Goshen Trail, because there are some needs there to kind of restore that in some ways, and some of the challenges that I know we're having from a public works standpoint of maintaining that trail. We're regularly having to bring back cinders and things like that to keep that trail the way it is, and that we've actually had to pave a couple spots. And our goal is not to have all of our trails in the township paved. We don't think that's the best answer. It's not the most environmentally friendly, but I would also argue what we're doing may not be the most environmentally friendly either, in that we're adding to the sediment issues that are going on. You brought up the concept of Drexel Lodge. We know that there's the train museum there. And it could be that we would actually leave from here, walk along out to the trail. There's a trail that goes back behind. And I think, John, that's where you were actually talking about potentially doing the trees. But go then and then walk along where the bike path is, along Campus Boulevard, and then down into Drexel Lodge. We can do that, and we could look at some ways to do that. So there are some opportunities to kind of explore some of those kind of things in that way. So
Would you volunteer to give a talk, George or Steve? Because you know what the township is going through with, for example, Goshen.
Meaning on the day.
I don't want to volunteer, George. No.
If it was a day I was available, I would be happy to talk. Absolutely.
It's a Saturday.
He kind of gave me.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
Yeah,
of
and
course, we'd love to have you, but like, I know you need a day off to.
Right, right,
to
right.
see your family.
I appreciate.
So, I'm not gonna
Informing
do it.
one of us like he
Right,
informed
and I'm
you
not gonna
would work
do
too.
any December walk, but
Yeah,
if
and we
someone
need to
else
be
can
informed
go.
about the different trails. I would volunteer to do that for the Goshen Trail and meet with Stephen and or George and get the information like he imparted to you about the Meadow Trail.
Sure.
Those events at the Square Tavern, as Terry shared with us, are December 4th and the 18th. Those are 2 Saturdays at 2 p.m. And then we,
But we would do it like at 12.
that's what that's what I'm
sorry.
trying to get down, is doing the walk first,
Yeah.
maybe
Oh,
at
yeah.
12?
Yeah.
Okay,
Like we did
Because-
before.
because we decided at our last meeting that we're not having a meeting in December.
That's correct.
So this would be our event for December, which we had kind of said because the weather is going to be bad. We won't probably do a lot of walking on the trails again until the spring. But this one sounds like it's a really nice fit and you already really like working together with Kathy.
Oh, yeah. she
So
did.
I think December is probably not the right time for us to approach Drexel Lodge and a new partner organization to determine feasibility. But this one seems to fit in really nicely. So,
I think we should do one. The Goshen Trail is significantly shorter than the one
Yeah.
that we did the previous time.
even if it's bad weather, yeah.
And
2 miles up
Yep.
and back.
yeah, and can I also, so should we do the 4th or the 18th? If I would say the 4th.
The 4th is just a few weeks away. I don't know, publicity wise, I was going to say the 18th
But the
because
18th is going to be, it's a Saturday before Christmas. There's not going to be, in my opinion, I think more people are all of a sudden focused on family stuff, finishing up their shopping. I would highly doubt, and you're also increasing the chance of just cold weather.
I like the 18th because it gives us more time to prepare and also people are starting to wind down a little bit and get, like Anthony said, focused on home and Christmas, and it's a Christmas event.
yes,
For those that celebrate.
it's a small, yeah, I think either, I just think, I know promoting events, it's hard to
You
get
need
people's
time to
attention. And I
promote
think
it.
one of the things that worked so well this time was that there were several posts, hitting people from different angles, et cetera. But that's just, again, I don't think there's a right or wrong here. It's
Okay.
just,
Want to vote?
yeah.
I would think one.
Mhm.
No, because you want somebody to talk beforehand, and that took time for everybody to get, you need like a window
Okay.
of 15 minutes ahead. 1 o'clock's gonna, and you
Oh,
have
probably.
Dunwoody people coming with their little picks and cool stuff that they
Right.
bring, and, they're not fast. But you were a good sweeper.
So 12th.
I was,
Yeah.
and I was older than a lot of the Dunwoody
Yeah,
people
you
that I
were.
talked to.
Okay, so is this something we want to vote on?
Well,
Does-
I'm not sure we can vote, but maybe we can
You
get a
can.
consensus.
You can vote on it.
Okay.
And I'm going to ask you to do two things. I'm going to ask you to go ahead and take a vote, but I'm going to ask you first to vote to amend the agenda to discuss having another event in December. And then that'll be your first vote. The second vote will then be to approve what you just amended the agenda. And then Nick, you and I have a project to do tomorrow morning to repost the agenda and get it back out, not only on the website, but here, that we had amended the agenda. Okay?
Okay, do I hear a motion to amend the agenda?
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Now, would someone like to make a motion as to the particular date that they would prefer?
I would like to make a motion for the walk preceding the Square Tavern event that we're adding to the agenda be December 18th at 12:30.
I hear a second.
I second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Let's have it. Very
So
good.
we have a 12:30 start time? Is that what we have?
Yep,
Yes.
on December 18th.
Okay.
And the event at the Square Taverns at 2.
And this will be along the Goshen Trail.
This will be the walk along the Goshen Trail.
And I should put to be clear, into the publicity, which again will go on the patch, Facebook, next door, that you're going to give a talk prior to this, or who's going to give the guide?
I can.
Yeah.
Okay. I can do it.
Great.
And I would just make a suggestion that maybe this time, because we had people reposting, and I think it was just the time change, that we did the daylight savings swap. But if we put the time in the actual address, 12:30 event, then regardless of who posts what in terms of these calendar functions, it's not going to do the change, because we did have it in two different places. So that might just be a good thing. December 18th, 12:30, and then list whatever it is.
Yeah, I thought the publicity
was
going up to
great.
our last walk was wonderful. So now that we have extra few weeks, I expect.
And Aaron, maybe George would deign to be interviewed for one of the publicity videos, Yeah, he's not here now, but again, just
Oh, he's not there.
the.
Can you do that again?
Yeah, I didn't.
Oh, interview
George.
George, if he's our
Again,
subject
as a
matter
publicity
expert.
video for this walk? And you're gonna do the same publicity for this that you did for the Newtown Meadow Walk?
Pretty much. It's never exact.
Same idea.
Yes.
I will meet with George and possibly Steve just to get historic information on the trail and what to talk about. Okay.
I think we should thank Kathy in a formal way for hosting two of these historical societies.
It's a great partnership. Really great.
Wonderful.
Okay.
All right. Any additional business?
Thank you to the attendees who are here tonight.
Any items for the next agenda that you would like to discuss?
Just a reminder, you look for those items for peak of the meeting. So you're looking for all the items for this Wednesday of last week, this meeting. Even if the meeting was on Thursday.
And then point of clarification, our next meeting will be in January, right? Because we've said,
Correct.
yeah, yeah.
Correct. Yeah, we're having a very hard time trying to figure out how we're going to meetings that have to happen in December.
Right, no,
So I'm very
understood. And
thankful
what
that
we,
This group is not meeting because I don't even know where I would have.
yeah, we have the December 18th now as a meet the public.
Right.
Thing, so that'll be grand.
And just making sure the agenda items for our Tuesday meetings are due the Wednesday before, and that includes the minutes.
Because we meet on staff on Thursday morning. We review every agenda. We go through and make sure that hopefully like, we don't have duplicates when we can and those kind of things. Sometimes what happens is you all submit something and I meet with them and we submit something. So it's better if we can make sure.
And you would like Aaron to continue presenting minutes for
Yes.
you to review, and then at some point, she will be the official minute person.
Aaron is the official minute person.
Okay,
I am.
but your minutes appeared, right? Signed by
I
you?
think they just had my signature on it by accident. You
Okay.
can take that off.
All right, good.
Because what's in the system, it has my signature. for all
Okay.
minutes, but it really is the secretary's.
Excellent.
I'll make sure I have my name on them.
Good,
Yep.
good.
Dan and I discussed that issue.
Yeah.
They're just using your signature on everything, all the checks, everything.
Yeah, my signature goes in a lot of places. And so, I am the official secretary for the township, but it shouldn't be on these.
Got it.
Good.
May I ask Nick a question? Via you, there was an event list with all of these people who said that they wanted to go. Do you have those names from the Facebook event that I could utilize in future publicity, or is that legal? How do we?
I can pull a report of all. I'm not sure what information it all provides. I don't think it.
So, just to try and get the word out again.
Sure.
Right, and I can send you the the video I'll do of George and we'll do another one.
If we have the names too, a lot of the people that showed up saw the Facebook post because they're either part of the Newtown Square community Facebook group or the Marple Newtown Facebook group. So if we have the names, there's always a way that we could go in there and reach out to them within those groups and say, hey, we're doing another event and we'd like to know if you'd like to join us with this as well. And also if you could this time bring another person, stuff like that. So the names are still very helpful, even if we don't have.
And I did
Contact
take the
email.
names when they were in the parking lot. We got about 15 or 20 of them.
Yeah.
I think some people came in from other directions, so I wasn't able to
Yeah.
get all, but it's a good start. Okay, any board comment further? Any public comment?
Thank you all for joining.
Would you have-
He had to come.
Yes.
I would ask you to
Could you-
stand at the podium.
Could
only
you
so
state
that-
your name
Because
and
we're recording, that way
address?
we get the information.
Good evening. My name's Andrew Zahner, and I live in Newtown Square, St.
you
Albans
give us your
neighborhood
address?
specifically,
In Newtown?
3549 Winding Way.
Thank you.
And I just came to find out a little bit of information of a possible trail going on the Pico property of the old railway in between Winding Way or Rear Park to Brookside Park. So this is just more of an information meeting for me that I'm trying to figure out what's going on. I'm not sure if that feasibility, the discussion on the feasibility for the Delaware County
Yes, that
open
was,
space, that was part of it.
that is the intended area for that feasibility study is
And,
along the Pico.
Is there a possible proposed date of when that would happen?
We're waiting for the information from the county back from whether or not we get the grant. And we know, we believe we've gotten the grant. We just haven't gotten the feedback yet. The paperwork, as George mentioned. And then once we get that, we'll start taking action. Like I said, we'll do an RFP. We'll be meeting with all the neighbors, having those kind of discussions.
That'd be nice to meet with the neighbors, because unfortunately I wasn't addressed when the park was decided to be changed. So I thought that I would hear from the township, but we didn't.
Well, it was a public process, so there was a lot of opportunity for
Yeah.
the public to be involved.
Unfortunately, with COVID and the pandemic and everything, I think that this township building would have been flooded with the neighbors had we had a different type of opportunity.
Okay.
But
What I would tell you is when we go to do this, we have about 70 hours of time set aside for this project to be related to meeting with public. Not all of that will be public meetings, like big meetings. Some of it may be individual meetings with key property owners along the way.
that'd be great.
Okay?
Like that. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Okay, hearing none, do I have a motion to adjourn? Second? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it.
Excuse me, sir. Can you show me, I live in St. Albans, so I'm just curious where